everybody. Welcome back to A Gentleman's Life. And I thought I'd spend this Memorial Day. It's kind of gray outside, and I wanted to do another video. And today I kind of want to just take you along on a tour of my collection as it is now and give you an idea of my plans of the future. I thought I'd just ramble on a little bit and give you guys an idea of where I'm coming from when I bring these videos to you about watches and my thoughts on them, knowing as how I've already done a review on the System 51 from Swatch, and I've responded to a video from Stuart Lomas about how watches can become more than watches. So I wanted to give you guys a perspective on where I'm at in my collecting, where I plan on going, and kind of how I look at watches as a whole. So without further ado, what I'm going to do is switch it to first-person view, and we're going to take a look at my collection, and I'll talk through it, and then I'll also show you pictures of a couple things to give you some perspective on what's upcoming and why I'm thinking the way I'm thinking. Alright, we are back, and we are now in first-person view mode, and this is what I would call the core of my collection, right here. This is the top of my large watch box. So starting with the top row, right here we have a Christopher Ward Trident GMT. Now, I actually really like the Christopher Ward's, good quality for money, but this one is actually going to get sold somewhat soon. I have a new one incoming. So the story behind this is when this was the version, this is the first version of the Christopher Ward Trident series. They only had the 42 millimeters for the GMT. They came out with a smaller size for the regular Tridents. Well, they recently redesigned the Trident series into like a Mark II. And actually on my computer screen, what you'll see is the one I just ordered. So that is the second variation, or the Mark II of the Christopher Ward Trident. And what they did was they created both 42 and 38 millimeter sizes for all of the model lines, the regular, the GMT, etc. So since I've never really quite been happy with how my GMT fit, the 42 millimeter, it just never quite seemed to fit quite right for me. And I have other 42 millimeter dive watches that fit fine, but this one just never quite fit right. So I decided to order the new version in the 38 millimeter and try that and see how that one fits. So when I have this on pre-order, it's supposed to come out in the end of the month, the end of May, and when that gets here in the mail, I am going to sell the previous version and keep the smaller version. So for this one, it's just a size issue. I actually really like the Tridents. You can kind of see there the wave dial. I have one of the watches with a wave dial, but it's really well done, and it kind of disappears depending on how you look at the watch. It's just really well done, polished on the tops. You can see my fingerprints there, brushed on the sides, a signed crown, and just really well done. So that one's going to go for size, and this I actually specifically picked this version for the color, and you'll see that as I go through the rest of my divers. I'm going to have 5 divers in my collection, and you'll see everything I have right now is black and blue, so I wanted to change it up a little bit. The second one in my collection here is my Omega Seamaster. So this is the Bond version, and it happens to be the last version that had the wave dial. Let's see if I can get that to focus there. Sorry, I'm on the iPad, so it's a little bit big. You can see the wave dial there. Again, it kind of almost disappears. It's really subtle. This is the last variation of this with the wave dial. The new one that came out after this is ceramic. Which I love ceramic, but I really like the wave dial on it. I like the look of this one. Put it on leather for now, but this is the coaxial chronometer. So it's a Cossack, and it has the 2500 coaxial movement. And this is just a watch I'd wanted for a really long time and really liked. So I finally decided to get one second hand, and I've been extremely happy with it. It's a 41 millimeter, and actually it fits my wrist about as good as any watch I've ever owned. Really, really fantastic fit on my wrist. So that is the second one. That's a nice deep blue. And then I have my vintage diver. So this is a Seiko, Japanese. It is a 1976 Seiko 6105, 8119. So the 8119 just means this was the model for the United States. But this is probably one of the most sought after vintage Seiko divers. Really fantastic. You can see the asymmetrical case shape there, and this was actually a diver that was bought often by U.S. Army members when in Vietnam, in war in there, and then brought back with them. It's just a really nicely done, really well styled. You can see the applied indices, the hands, in pretty good shape when I got it. I really like the fully graduated bezel, the locking crown, screw-in lock crown that has lock on it, one of the original ones there. You can see the history behind it, some of the scrapes, but it's in really good shape, and I really love it. So, going on to that, I have another blue. This is a Squale, the Squale 50 Atmos. I got this when they came out with a bead-blasted case, and then a completely matte finished bezel and dial. And I just love the color blue Squale uses here. They really get colors really well. It really pops. The orange minute hand, just like how they did it decades ago, actually, when Squale was building their dive watches back in the 60s. I just really love it. The crown is really hidden away, and it has the Van Buren sign crown there. You can kind of see that. There you go. Yeah, the Van Buren crown and Squale Shark for the professional line. And just really well done. This is actually a 42 millimeter, but it fits really small for its size. You can see it's really well curved and really hugs the wrist. And like a lot of really nice dive cases, you can kind of see the beveling on the case there in the lugs. And just really, really neat design. Also a fully graduated bezel, which you'll see is a trend. I kind of like that. I have, as you can see, these middle three divers in my collection here all have the fully graduated bezels with the seconds going all the way around. And then my final one is it's a Rolex, although not a Rolex, is the Tudor Pelagos. Really a wonderful modern diver. 42 millimeters, and it's just really, I'm amazed at how well it fits. Amazing quality and machining. It is just superb. I feel comfortable wearing this in any situation. Fully titanium case. You can see the helium escape valve, the nice beveling on the case there. Excellent bracelet, titanium bracelet. The stainless steel clasp has the glide system. So the first three on the left are set positions, and then on the right here, it actually adjusts with a spring to your wrist size. So just really neat. I think this is probably the only ceramic bezel I know of that is fully loomed, and the loom on this watch actually is the best loom I've ever come across on any watch. It is unbelievable. It just shines like a beacon at night. It is fantastic. And this is a matte ceramic bezel, which is also really rare, and I really like how it looks. It's really fantastic. So this is really a favorite watch of mine. One of my, this was my original Grail watch. As soon as it came out, I knew I wanted it, and I've been really happy with it. So originally, that's my 5 divers, and originally my plan was I wanted to replace the Christopher Ward GMT with a Rolex Submariner, specifically a vintage reference 5513, which was from the mid-60s to mid-80s, and it was the one that had the 2 lines of text on the Submariner with no date. However, I realized, I have all black and blue watches, and essentially this is really basically just a modern take on the Submariner, if you will. If the Submariner was created today, brand new, and had never existed before, I feel like the Pelagos is what the Submariner would be. And then I really love my 2 blue divers and don't really want to get rid of them. And then I have a vintage already in my Seiko that I really like. So I thought, you know what? For now, I'm going to hold off on the Submariner and enjoy, the ones I have. And when I replaced this, I got the white with the ceramic red bezel, which will just give me a bit of a different color change. And I think that'll supplement the diver collection very well, and I don't feel that bad not having the Submariner with this collection. I mean, I have the Ultimate and tool divers to me in the Tudor Pelagos, which to me is essentially what a vintage sub is very much tool-like. It's not as dressy as the current ones. You know, I have another really nice light blue tool-designed Squale. I've got the vintage Seiko, and then I've got the dressier diver and the Seamaster. So I feel like the Submariner is really not necessary right now, and I'd like to save for another Rolex. So I thought I would save for the other one first instead, and just see how I get on with the divers I have. So going to the next row, you can see it's a little lighter, but this is, like I said, this is only the core of my collection right now. So that will get supplemented over time. Here I have the Hampton Khaki Field. For me, it's the 38mm auto. So I like the smaller size. I also have it in 42, but for me the 38 was the one I wanted. You can see it's really nicely brushed on the case within the polished bezel. And the 38mm, the date window sits right where it should. On the 42mm, it's not quite in the right spot, and it looks a little funky to me. You can see the really nice, let's see if I can get it better in there. You can see the really nice sword hands there, and then the second hand with the red tip. Really nice pop there. And you can see the kind of the layering of the dial. You can see in the middle portion with the 24-hour military time, the larger first 12 hours and the separate ringer on the outside, and then all of your second tickers are on the outside of that. So this is just one I really like. And this one, actually, so this one holds a little bit of sentimental value in that my parents bought this for me after my promotion to sergeant in the military. So that one's some sentimental value, and I'll get on another one like that in a moment. But moving on from there, another military-styled one is this Marathon. So this is the Marathon General Purpose Mechanical, and this was a limited edition 600-piece that was released last year by Marathon, and it's a take on a watch they made in the 80s. And the story behind this is that the owner and president of Marathon came across a set of 600 new old stock Belarus signed ETA 2801 mechanical movements. So not automatic but mechanical. So they don't have the the counterweight to wind themselves back up. So he decided to do the re-release of the watch that they released in the 80s that had that movement in it as well. And this is what they came up with. Really fantastic. I really like it. It's a little bit different. It's really small. It's a 36mm, but you can see here it's got the tritium tubes around for the hour marks and also for the minute and hour hand. This is 17 joules. It has the radiation symbol for the tritium, and the tritium is really nice actually. And you can also see the both 12 and 24-hour hour markers on this. And then you can see the case shape is really interesting in that it has an integrated bezel with a case, which just really drew me in as something really different and that I really, really liked. And you can see kind of the 3D effect of the tritium tubes there on the dial. Really neat. But I really like this. It fits great under a cuff for work when I want to wear it in that way. And it's my first, what I find is a bit rare these days, is it has a central second hands hand wind movement, which I thought was just a little different. I hadn't come across that. So I decided to pick that up, and I've been really happy with that. Really neat, the new old stock movement, and I really like it. And then my last one in the core of my collection, and this is really in the core of my collection simply because of the sentimental value. So as I mentioned, this one my parents got me when I got promoted to sergeant. Well, this watch was what my parents got me before my first promotion in the military. So I went through, the basic training, and I went through my job training, went to my first base, and as I was leading up to my first promotion, my parents got me this so I could, wear my dress uniform. And it was actually the watch that got me wearing a watch again. And it's just an ESQ by Movado. It's a quartz brand. ESQ is a U.S. only sub-brand of Movado. And I like the design. I found out later that it was a homage to the Cartier tank. But my parents got me this, and I have the sentimental value for it, so I've kept it so far. And you know, I'll wear it if I have to get in a dress uniform or something like that. And just interesting, more classic design. So I've kept that, and it's so far stayed in the core of my collection because of the sentimental value. Alright, so moving on to what I would call, you know, not the core of my collection, but in a separate watch box, I have my separate like sub-collection, which is my Steinhardts. I love the Steinhardt brand, and part of that is just that, you know, I've gone to their headquarters, I've met the owner, Mr. Steinhardt, and we got to sit down and just talk about the watch industry, you know, what we like in watches, kind of what they're doing and what his plans are and things like that. And I just really enjoyed that. So I have here what is essentially the most different thing in all of my collection. This is the Steinhardt Apollon. It's way bigger than anything else I have and anything I normally would have worn. And it's a 45 millimeter, which for me just is huge given my small wrist. But it's titanium. It keeps it pretty light. And the cool thing about this that drew me in was that it has 3 separate bezels. So it comes with a bronze bezel, which I have on it right now. Also a DLC stainless steel DLC bezel, and then a brushed stainless steel bezel. And it's just really cool how you can get to watch so many different personalities just by changing the bezel and the strap. And then on the dial, you have actually a sandwich dial, the gray underneath the black. And it's just a really neat design. It's something a little bit different that I hadn't seen before. You can see the sandwich there. So that drew me in, and I decided to get that because it was in a pretty good, you know, price range. Couldn't really complain. And then I have one of Steinhardt's Submariner homages, and this one is their Ocean Black. So it's the Ocean 1 series, but it's DLC. And I've put it on a NATO with PVD hardware, which I really like. I have the ceramic bezel insert on there. And I have actually a pair of Omega sword hands I'm going to put on this to change it up a little bit. No Cyclops, which is big for me. I really like it, and the reason I got this is essentially I saw the Submariner that was blacked out, but I knew money-wise I would only ever consider buying one Submariner in my life, and I already have decided on the 5513 reference for my Submariner, so I knew I'd never buy the blacked out Submariner. So I bought, you know, the Steinhardt DLC variant as a homage to that, because I knew I'd never spend the money on the real one for a DLC watch or PVD watch. So I use this for work sometimes, and that's one I'll probably hand on to a brother or something like that in the future at some point. And then my favorite of my Steinhardt divers, and really more, again, kind of like the Apollon, more of an original design, is my Ocean 2. So this one I have on a bracelet, but I also have leather for it. It's much more of a dressier style. What I love about this one first is the bezel. It is a sapphire bezel, and then the white on the bezel is all lume. So in the night, at night, you know, in the dark, the whole bezel glows in luminous material under the sapphire, which is really neat. And then the detailing on this watch, if I can get it to focus. There we go. Dressy and vintage at the same time. And it's just a design that I really like. So that's the Ocean 2, and that's one that Steinhardt has made that I think a lot of people probably don't know of as well. More of an original design. And then the last Steinhardt I have is one of their pilot watches, and this is one of their b-uhrs. And actually, to show you this one the best, I will have to take it off. And as you can see here, it is also a sandwich dial. And then the really interesting thing about this watch, this premium version, is actually Steinhardt did their own. This is the first time they've really heavily modified movements. And this was originally a Unitas 6497 that Steinhardt then did some modifications on. You can see the swan neck regulator, the full plate with the kind of pattern that almost looks like the circular motion made by the watch is it has expanded out through the plate. At least that's how it looks to me. Really neat. And the The also, you know, the perlage they've done under the wheel, and the skeletonized rotor. Just a really beautiful piece of work. And it was the first time they really did their own movement modifications like that. So when I went to visit the Steinhardt headquarters, I got that as kind of a memory or remembrance of going to visit and talk to Mr. Steinhardt. So that's the story behind that one, and I wear that quite a bit. Bottom drawer of my other box. They're not really like permanent parts of the collection. They're just things I have here and there, and that will go out the door at some point. So on the left we have a Seiko Orange Monster diver. Really like it. Good quality watch for $200, but it just doesn't have any place in my permanent collection. Not something I'm going to wear often enough to keep permanently. Same for this little Seiko 5 pilot-styled watch. This will probably be one I'll give away at some point. Then I also have a Christopher Ward pilot watch. It's also, as you can see, styled off the b-uhr styling pattern, but it's got a date window and extra detailing and wording and lettering on there. So that, at some point, I think is probably going to get gifted to a family member. And then I have the Swatch, the System 51, which I just thought was an interesting concept and wanted to, you know, check out and see what it was all about. So I got a System 51. And then over here I have another Seiko 5, and this is one of the dress styles. So I got that as a cheap dressy watch. And then this is something I literally only have for running. I have my Garmin that I use for tracking my running workouts. And then I have a couple of G-Shocks that I use for deployments and military type stuff. And also a Sunto vector that I use for the same. And I'll probably narrow it down to just one or two of these left over at the end. And that's it. But for now I've got all four. And as I fill up the watch box with more permanent collection pieces, these watches will work their way out the door. I'm already looking at possibly selling the Seiko, and we'll see what else moves on as time goes on. Welcome back. So what I am essentially planning on here is having a diver sub-collection, and then I also have like a sport chronograph sub-collection, and aviation military field watches, and just a couple dress watches, and that's it. And the Steinhardts, which will stay in their separate box. But the rest of the box, once it's full, there's no more unless I get rid of something. And right now, my diver collection is pretty much complete once that new GMT Christopher Ward comes in. And the only thing that might change is I might swap out either the Seiko, vintage Seiko, or the Squale. Probably the vintage Seiko for a vintage Submariner at some point. But I'm undecided as to when right now, and I'll explain that in just a minute, actually. My diver sub-collection is pretty much complete at this point. For the sport sub-collection right now, I have 3 on the list, and I may add 1 or 2 over time. I may not. We'll see. Right now, for me, the first one is the Omega Speedmaster, the moon watch, essentially, the watch worn on the moon. I love space and NASA, and I really love the moon watch. I also like it stylistically as well. So that's on the list. And then one that's a bit more of a reach, the Rolex Daytona, the reference 6263 non-Paul Newman, black bezel, black dial. For me, is just the epitome of what a chronograph should be. And then the other one is more of a color for me, and that's the Tudor Monte Carlo. So one of the vintage Tudor Monte Carlos, like the 7149 possibly. I really like just the pop of color that has really classic vintage kind of racing style design. So really like that. For aviation watches, I want first and foremost the Rolex Gmt Master, the BLNR or the blue black, the one that recently came out in 2013 if I remember correctly. I also really like one of the Glycines, the Airman SST, which is a bit of a different stylistically, and I'll show you both of these really quick. So here is the Rolex GMT Master, the blue black. That's the first time ceramic has been used in 2 different colors on a bezel, so I think that is really, really neat. And then this is the Glycine, vintage Glycine Airman SST. So you can see it's a 24 hours, and then it has a separate 24-hour inner bezel, which you can turn for a separate time zone. So I really like that design, really neat. So that is one I also am looking to get. And then I'm also interested in a Laco. I'm looking for one of the B-type hand winds from Laco. They're one of the original companies that made those watches for the German Air Force in World War II. So one of those. And then I also have my eye on possibly a Longines aviation watch, but I'm undecided on that right now. And then for the military field watches, I really only have one thing, or maybe two I'm looking at adding to the collection right now on top of the Hamilton and the Marathon. One would be a vintage Tudor Ranger, and the other being a vintage Belarus. It's actually the Series 3061. So this was the Belarus that Steve McQueen wore in the Bullet movie. So those are the only two kind of field watch styled watches I'm considering adding right now. And then I have two dress watches on my list. The first is a JLC Reverso, which is pretty straightforward. I think most people know that one. The other is a Zenith. It's the El Primero Chronomaster with the moon phase. So I also have a picture of that one, which, if you have a look here, other way, sorry. So that is the Zenith Chronomaster moon phase. So that is the other one I'd like to get as a dress watch, because I don't really consider that a sport watch. And at that point, I mean, that pretty much will complete my collection. All the random fun watches will kind of be gone at that point. And I'll have whatever Steinhardts I have and the collection I've already built, plus those. So thanks for watching. And if you have any questions or have any about any of my watches, or have any review requests, or any other questions or thoughts you'd like to add, feel free to leave something in the comments below, or send an email to the email that I'll have in the description section, and I will give you a response and give you my thoughts. Thanks for watching. Talk to you next time.